everyone. I am so pleased to be here in Barcelona, and this is my very first time at an AMEC Summit, so I'm eager to learn from all of you throughout the next 2 days. And I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to come here and share with you Adobe's journey in communications measurement. We are revamping our framework and the way that we do comms measurement at Adobe. I definitely will not have all of the answers for you. This is, a process that we're learning as we go, but I will share with you what we are learning and what we're experiencing in terms of the challenges in measuring traditional media. So here we go. So we received a directive from our VP of Communications about 6 months ago. And her directive to us was, we really need to modernize our comms organization with an emphasis on showing true business and market impact at scale. It was no longer just okay for us to measure outputs and measure activity that our comms teams were doing. We really needed to show how are we impacting our business and what is our audience doing in relation to what we're putting out in terms of communications. So how do we do that? How do we effectively measure the impact of the communications on our business? I don't know. We're so comfortable with reporting the volume of media outreach, with what we're doing on a day-to-day with our PR activities. At this point, we really need to reframe. What are we measuring? What is the ROI of doing what we're doing in comms? So what we had to do was take a step back and do an audit, an assessment globally of what are we doing in terms of comms measurement today. We had all of our global comms leaders tell us and fill out like this really simple Excel spreadsheet and tell us, okay, who are your stakeholders? How many reports are you generating? What are you actually doing in terms of tracking PR? And what data are you sharing in these reports? What we learned is that we have 30-plus agencies worldwide operating independently in their own silos. We have PR agencies, we have a global measurement agency that we work with, we have a share of voice agency that we work with, and we also have our individual comms leads that are doing their own monitoring, filtering, reporting out their own KPIs, reporting on their insights, and inevitably this process leads to a lot of, there's no consistency. There was no single way to really understand truth. So what we found was that we had tons of data silos just operating everywhere, 30-plus agencies just doing their own tracking. We had inconsistent monitoring methodologies. It's impossible to get 30 agencies all on the same page to monitor and do the same exact thing. It's completely impossible to do that. We also found that as agencies were getting content in, they were doing all kinds of different things in terms of tagging, encoding content. They did not use the same methodology, the keywords, the strategies to identify, what does innovation mean? Does this count as innovation? Maybe so for one team, but not so for another. And reporting was running wild. We spent so much time on reporting. We generated about 900 reports per year last year. For what? I have no idea. I'm privy to a handful of those reports per year, but 900 reports these 30-plus agencies were generating. And majority of what we were reporting on were definitely output focused. And that's what we also did, was we took an assessment. What data was included in all of these reports? And what you'll notice is, shout out to AMEC here. We used their framework in terms of categorizing all the data that was included in our reports. And what you'll notice here is that we were so over-indexed on outputs. We had clip rolls, pages and pages of clip rolls. In our last report, there were maybe, if you copied everything, it'd be 40 pages in a Word document. Who's going to read 40 pages, right? No one's going to look at that. But we over-index on outputs, and we had very little focus on outcomes, our impact on our business. What did our audience do? Did they actually go to Adobe.com site? Did they go and read our blogs? Were they engaging with us on social? So we had very little in terms of the metrics that really matter for us. So it was time for us to create a new measurement framework, and we always need to have a catchy name when we start something new. So our catchy name was Project Moto. We wanted to move from outputs to outcomes. And this is how we started with our framework. We had to devise a whole new strategy. How do we better understand what we need to measure? What metrics really matter for us? And we started in the same way in which Alex mentioned earlier. We had to start with objectives. What are we trying to do for our business? So first phase here is our business objectives. What do we want our organization to achieve? Because in association with this campaign, with this announcement, et cetera, what are we trying to do? And the next phase was, well, we need to tie our communications objectives to what we want to do for our business, right? So the third phase was, which was really important in terms of how we actually categorize our data within our own analytics product, and that's our customer journey. We need to align our business objectives, our comms objectives, to what phase of the customer journey we're trying to target. Are we in the discover phase? Are we in the buy phase, et cetera? So really articulating these first 3 steps helps us figure out what measurement, what metrics matter for us. You know, we're not going to get rid of outputs. They're important for us. But we also want to make sure that the outtakes, the outcomes, and the business impacts align to what we're trying to do. I'm going to go over this slide really quickly. This is our own customer journey map. Certainly, you all will have your own stages in your customer journey, but these are the five that we care about for our customers: the discover phase, evaluate phase, buy, use, and of course, we all want them to renew their Creative Cloud product at the end of the day. So these are our 5 phases that are very important for us, and with every comms communication, we want them to really articulate and identify what phase are we trying to work against for our customers. And then all of this comes out to these 4 basic measurement pillars. When we think about what we want our audience to do, number 1, outputs. We're always going to measure this. This is what our comms teams are doing every single day, measuring our activity, our comms activities. How many articles did we place? Our key markets, our key media targets, are they talking about us? The second measurement pillar is outtakes. What do we want our audiences to feel or think? And traditionally, we're doing this in terms of surveys. More recently, we've used our social research in order to gain a better understanding of how our audience is feeling and thinking. The third pillar is our outcomes. What actually do we want our target audience to do? And we think of these in terms of visits to our adobe.com site. We might think of these as social engagements. Are they interacting and sharing, retweeting, commenting about our activities in social media or elsewhere? And the last phase is, of course, the last measurement pillar is impact. What do we do for our business in terms of revenue, in terms of our stock prices, in terms of our reputation? Do we make an impact in these particular things? So how do we do this? So our comms team, we own our comms data, right? That's the part of the data that we actually have. We know how, with our measurement agencies, we know how many articles do we generate in any given time period. But we don't have all of the data. We don't have all the business impact data. We don't have all the subscription data, order data, revenue data. So we really need to collaborate with our data partners throughout the organization. So we had to do some research. Well, where does all this data lie? So, tons of different sources of data that we're not privy to. So we really need to work with our data partners across Adobe in order to get these insights. So we have data from brand publishing, we have social media data, we have mobile data, sales data. We need to collaborate across Adobe in order to form a cohesive picture of what's happening with our communications. And this is, a pretty quick view, very, down and dirty kind of correlational analysis with our comms volume data. What you'll see here is that there's 2 spikes that correlate fairly well. One is how much volume of .cloud coverage do we get? And the green spike here is, well, did they try our product? Did they try our Acrobat product? Did they try our Sign product as a result of any of our coverage on Document Cloud? So, these are quick and dirty, it's an inferential relationship between two of these variables. It certainly is not causational. We're not saying that, placement of our articles about .cloud is directly correlated to trying our product, but it's an inference that we can make that, these two things are associated. So once we understood where all the data came from, we really had to figure out, well, what data is available from these different teams. And what we did was we organized the data that was available into these 4 measurement pillars very distinctively, so that we can kind of, every time we have a campaign, every time we have an announcement, we can move through the comms measurement framework, and then when we get to the measurement component, we know what data we can pick. What impact metrics can we use to assess whether or not we were successful with this particular campaign or with our communications measurement program? All right. So next, I'm going to take you through an example of how we at Adobe applied this comms measurement framework to one specific campaign that we had at Adobe Summit. It's called Hack the Bracket. This is primarily a US-based thing. It's about March Madness. I don't know if you all are familiar with March Madness, but it is a national college basketball championship. And in the very beginning of March Madness, there are 64 teams that are in the running to be the college basketball championship. And what happens is that you get this sheet of paper and you fill out a priori before the tournament starts, who's gonna win this tournament? And it's kind of, it's a fun little activity. You call it a bracket. My husband and I play. I have beat him years and years and years. Probably 80% of the last 10 years I have won, and I know nothing about basketball, nothing. But what's interesting about this campaign is what we did was we let everybody, you all could have signed up for Adobe Analytics and explore the tool, and Adobe Analytics with their predictive analytics would help you figure out which team should win, which one should you put in your bracket. So we worked with our PR and our social teams, worked through the framework. Okay, what was your business objective? We're trying to advance the leadership with our experienced business and in our marketing category. We're trying to highlight new features with our analytics product. We asked them to articulate, well, what phases of the customer journey are you trying to target here? They said discover. I want them to discover our analytics product. I want them to evaluate it and try it and use it. And then from there, we could figure out, okay, well, what sorts of outputs, outcomes, impacts can we use to assess the effectiveness of this Hack the Bracket campaign? And we look to the way that we categorize our measurement data into the 4 pillars, and we're able to ascertain, hey, this data is available for us to figure out whether or not this is gonna, whether or not our campaign was effective. So next, I'm gonna show you what our reporting looked like. So you notice from that reporting, what we looked at was, well, did people try our product? We calculated how many hours did users actually use our analytics product. We also tracked how many leads were generated as a result of this particular campaign. People had to kind of sign up for that trial, so we got lead data from that as well. We also tracked visits to our Experience Cloud page on adobe.com. Did people come to the site to learn more about analytics or maybe our other solutions as well? So this was not just a comms activation. It wasn't about just how many articles do we get on Forbes, Mashable, whatever. It was about true business impact. Did we get anyone down that funnel in that customer journey to evaluate and ultimately buy? So what were our learnings? Okay, so we really highlighted to all of our social and communications leads that it is very, very fundamental for you to tie your business objectives to your customer journey, and that's how you figure out what metrics really matter for your team. We also learned that we have to do a better job about coming up with a single source of truth instead of these data silos that are operating independently kind of out in the wilds. We also found that we have to collaborate with our business to gather the meaningful insights that are available. We don't own all the data. We have to work together to come up with that cohesive picture. And the last thing is probably the most fun, is that we need to pilot new things and try things out, see if things work. Maybe they don't, but it's fun to kind of know. And that was the first time we actually did a PR report via video, so that was also another thing that people enjoyed. And that's it.
Thank you so much. Going to go to questions. Please think about it. Raise your arms because we will come to you. Meanwhile, a question from me, Jen, to start with. What was your trigger point within Adobe that made you realize we have to get better at evaluation?
Well, we got a lot of, it's not just that we need to show for our marketing organization that we're getting media in earned media. That wasn't really the main thing. The volume data wasn't important as much anymore because we have different parts of our product teams, our BU teams that wanted to see what did we do by spending all this money on PR? What did we do? What did we get by spending all of this money in social? We need to demonstrate value in terms of revenue and orders and subscriptions. That was a driving factor.
Okay, thank you. Question here, please, with this microphone helper. Thank you. Name and company, please.
Hi, Paul Hender from Cision. Thank you very much for that. Very interesting to hear you talk about the audit at the beginning with the 30-plus agencies. A follow-on question from that is, did you actually get was that difficult? Did you get pushback from agencies? And how did you build alignment about what you were trying to get to and then bring those important partners along with you?
Yeah, so we did not get pushback from the agencies in particular, I don't think. I mean, they kind of do what their comms leaders task them to do. So when they're filling out this spreadsheet, I'm sure it was a big pain point for them, but it was something that they needed to do. And our VP of comms really helped us by saying, hey, we really need to make a change. We can't keep doing the same thing. So it was collaborative. I think it was a give and take. I think that folks, the comms leads know they're getting a lot of pushback from their own BUs that they need to demonstrate some value, so that was a driving force. Working together, I think that's the key.
Okay, I'm looking for one more question. We have one, the lady here, please.
Hi, I'm Pragya Dubey from Agility PR Solutions. You mentioned that you had to collaborate for the data and go to all these different departments. Were you successful in getting the data from them? And more importantly, it's not a one-time ask, right? You need that data consistently going forward so that you can continue to map the outcomes or impacts. So what was your experience with that?
I think it was a challenge at the very beginning just to figure out what data was available. And once we knew what data was available, we turned to, it's a synergistic kind of experience, right? They want data from us, and we want, they want our data as well to demonstrate impact, because we're all looking for a cohesive picture as to what we're doing for our entire business, not just comms. And that was part of the piloting stage, is figuring out, okay, what can you provide for us? What can we do with it? What learnings can we get from this new data stream? And if it works out, then we kind of look to see how can we scale this? How can we continue? Because some of the data streams we looked at really weren't valuable for us. It wasn't much ROI, but it's really about piloting that and seeing if it works.
Thank you.
And Jen, you can see on screen one of the first sketches from Linda, our sketch noter, from your presentation.
Oh, great.
That was terrific.
So fun.
Thank you so much for being with us today.